So, I went to high school with this guy. We'll call him Bob. Bob and I, we were never close, but sometimes we hung out in the same circle. He was in a band and I was in drama, so it just kind of happened. But Bob was always a little bit off. I think he may have had a learning disability or something, and maybe that resulted in him being socially awkward. Anyway, by sophomore year, he was dating a friend of mine, so I saw more of him. And by junior year, he had dropped out and tried to get his GED, and that was the last that I heard of Bob, for a while at least. Fast forward to the summer 2 years after graduating. Bob calls me up, out of the blue, and asked me to go camping with him and a friend of his that I don't know. He says that he knows a spot that's totally secluded and that we'd be hiking 5 miles a day. He really tries to sell me on this. He insists that it'll be awesome and fun and that we'll bond. As I listen to him, though, something from the pit of my stomach says, no, don't do this. Never being especially close to him and not having seen him for 2 years, I thought it was weird that Bob would just call me up. So I declined his offer. The following November, Bob is on the news because he had killed his partner. He worked for an armoured van service and had stolen the money in the armoured van. There were news updates about him fleeing out of the state, and he was finally caught on a routine traffic stop, I believe. Anyway, when his case went to trial, his journal was entered into evidence. The prosecutor said that Bob wrote that he and his friend, the same one that was going to go camping with us, that they had hatched a plan to become professional assassins. Looking back on it all, I believe that that camping trip that he invited me on was all a ruse, so that he could get me into a secluded place so that he and his friend could practice how to kill someone, and namely, me. A couple of years ago, when I was way more sporty than I am now, I used to go for regular runs in the woods about a 15-minute drive from my house. I live in the UK and in a small rural village, pretty much in the middle of buttfuck nowhere. A lot of woods and forests are very ancient, and this particular area of the woodland, it was huge, with thick, dense trees everywhere. There was an old, what I assume, wagon track, leading up literally to the middle of the woods where it suddenly stopped, and the regular little dirt paths would start. In the car park that I would park in, there were barely ever any cars, but a lot of the time, there would be this huge van, which, honestly, it never scared me because there's loads of vans in England, and a lot of dog walking companies use them. So, as I said, I would regularly drive through the country lanes to this little park area, park my car and go for a nice run. This day in question, it was autumn, so there was a slight chill in the air and it was pretty overcast. I parked my car, noticed the van but didn't think anything of it as usual. I started running up the wagon track and was about 5 minutes in when I got to the place where the track stops and the dirt paths start. There, the path literally split into a crossroad. Back the way I came, and 3 dirt paths leading left, right, and straight on. I chose the straight-on path, even though I usually go right, just for the shits and giggles, because I wanted to switch it up a little. I'm running at a nice pace, getting a little out of breath now, and the bell goes on my app for me to slow down and walk. The path comes out of the dense woodland and into a little opening, with some cut logs and sparse trees, and I look around just observing the scene, admiring all the green. About 5 meters in front of me, the dense trees start again, and I'm headed there, when, all of a sudden, I get the weirdest feeling that I'm being watched. Now, I'm a female, but I'm 5'7", and literally, Not really scared of a lot. I go urban exploring, love ghost stories, don't get scared of being outside in the dark, etc. But for some reason, the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and I'm like 99% sure, without a doubt, that someone is watching me. My pace is still normal up to this point, just walking towards the dense trees, trying to figure out whether to turn around or not. When I get to the start of the thick woodland, and my eyes adjust to the darkening of the light, I chalk it up to my imagination and carry on forward, stepping over some brambles. My breathing by this point is normal again, and I was moving at what I imagined was a stealthy, nimble tread, like Legolas through the forest, and my wits about me, although clearly not enough for me to get the fuck out. But looking back, I was probably crashing through the undergrowth like a bull in a china shop. I am literally creeping the fuck out, thinking about turning back, sure that someone is watching me, when I look up from the ground and see a figure slip back behind a tree, about 2 meters in front of me. I literally freeze with my legs still lifted, like a fucking cartoon character, and process what the hell I just saw, whether it was a trick of the light or not. But after a pause of stupidity, I realized whoever it was, I could see their arm still sticking out slightly from behind the tree. Now, I'm usually a good fight or flight instant decision maker, but for some weird fucking reason, I literally just started backing up like a stealth ninja, which, mind you, I am not, and tripped over the brambles I had literally just been stepping over. I see the man begin to move out from behind the tree and get up off that floor like a whippet, running back out into the clearing. I run all the way onto the other side of the clearing before stupidly stopping and looking back to see if I had been seeing things or something. And as I look back, this fucking tall as fuck, really skinny man in a black hoodie, zipped right up to his face, steps out from the other side and literally just cocks his head towards me, staring. Honestly, I cannot tell you how fast I turned on my heels and just bolted. At this point, I'm flying through the fucking forest like Bear Grylls, one headphone still in, listening to the Couch to 5K woman tell me good job you're halfway there, and thinking ironically that I'm literally running for my fucking life. I don't stop this time until I'm back to the car. Back then, I had a shitty beat-up Ibiza, and my central locking was broken, so I used to have to use my key in the door to unlock it. Well, let me tell you, there was no fumble key drop like the films. I had that door open within 2 seconds, and noped the fuck out of there faster than anyone could tell me otherwise. I haven't been back there since, and honestly, I never want to go back. I don't know if he was playing some sort of prank on me, if he was connected to the van. He must have been, because otherwise, how the hell did he get there? Or if he was guarding some secret area where he was growing something and was just scaring me off or something. I don't know. Whatever the case, he sure creeped me the hell out though. Before I begin with my story, I need to give a little bit of background about myself. I'm a 21-year-old male, living in Germany in a rather big city, living on my own in my apartment. I moved out about 9 months ago, finished my schooling, and was finally in my own apartment. Everything was alright with the apartment. It was furnished, and I made myself pretty comfortable in it quickly. Time passed, and I enjoyed living there more and more, and everything was just totally normal, as you'd expect it to be. But one night, about 5 months ago now, I heard a loud bang that woke me up. It was a Saturday night, so I thought that it might be a drunk neighbor or something that shut their door loudly. Our stairwell echoes from loud noises, unfortunately. Thinking that, I tried to fall back to sleep again. But then I heard something again, and this time, it was like a woman was crying, really quietly. So I got up and pushed my ear against the wall from the other side of my bedroom. And now I could hear it really clearly. I didn't really know what to do in that moment, since we just lived wall to wall as neighbors and weren't actually living together or knew each other. But then, all of a sudden, it just stopped. Many minutes passed, and there was no more noise coming from the room, so I just decided to go back to sleep and check on her the next day. Since it could have been a private issue, and it wasn't like she was screaming or anything, I just let it go. After thinking about my decision that night, I kind of feel bad that I didn't call the police or something, just to be certain that everything was okay. But anyway, in the morning, before breakfast, I got out of my apartment and walked to the house next door. I looked at the nameplates. No nameplate. Weird. I still tried it though, and pressed on the doorbell. Nothing. I then tried again, but I had no luck, and there was an old lady standing in the stairwell, looking at me. She asked nicely what I wanted, and I told her that I wanted to talk to the girl living on the 4th floor, on the left. There are usually 2 apartments on one floor in Germany, with a few exceptions here and there. She gave me a look as if I spoke in a different language, though, so I asked her twice because I thought that she didn't understand me. She then said that there was nobody living there for like 3 months now. I was perplexed at this, but I thanked her and decided not to tell her about my last night because I didn't want to scare her or anything. I told her that it would be nice if she could hand out the number of the landlord to me. With the number, I went back home and had breakfast since it was early in the morning still. Later, when I called and told the landlord what I experienced, he kind of laughed and indicated that I was talking trash. Nevertheless, I convinced him to still check on it since there might be something up. We agreed upon meeting at noon, and he seemed to be pretty upset about this because he had to lift his ass midday for just nonsense apparently. Anyway, we met and we went up the stairwell. As we got closer and closer, my heart started beating really fast. Now standing in front of the apartment, my heart was ready to explode, in fact. He unlocked the door and I entered, rushed in every room, and it was empty. Every room. I stopped in the room that was right next to my bedroom. Just the wall separated it. I honestly couldn't believe it, and started questioning myself if it was just me. Maybe I was drowsy that night, or maybe I was hallucinating. I'd never hallucinated before, though. Either way, I felt dumb, and the look that the landlord gave me, it wasn't helping. It was really embarrassing. But I couldn't believe that I'd gone crazy or something, so I inspected the room more closely. As I looked at the radiator, I noticed that there was a stain. A red stain. It was blood. Now, I called the landlord over and pointed at the stain, and he assumed that it was just simple red colour or something. But I insisted that he give the police a call to be 100% sure. The landlord made the call pretty annoyed, but now visibly nervous too. The police arrived and I began to tell them my story. Because the police knew that we may have found some blood, they already knew to bring black flashlights with them. And as soon as they turned the flashlights on, we saw several shining stains smeared on the side of the radiator. Furthermore, there were a few more stains spread all over the room. Little splatters here and there. These drop stains ended right in front of the window across the room too. And that was it. There was nothing else that we could see. After that, the police interviewed me again and told us that we could leave now, so that they could try and investigate the apartment. A little bit shocked, I went back home, but I couldn't stop thinking about the crying woman. Days passed and the police, they never contacted me again. So I called my local police department to see if there was anything new that came up from the case. The officer told me that there was nothing else found at the crime scene. And I mean absolutely nothing. No fingerprints, no footprints, no items, no hair, nothing. The cleaned up bloodstains were just in that one room. And no one has seen anybody strange in the house. The door lock was intact, of course, and no one was missing in the area, and the landlord wasn't a suspect. They only confirmed that the blood samples that they found were from a male and female, which made it even more mysterious. I've never heard anyone else after that night, too. This whole story haunted me for a while too, since I got all kinds of questions like, who was she? Why are there no more traces of anyone? And how could she even get into the apartment without having a key? And why even go there? All the water and electricity are all turned off. I don't know what to think. Maybe you guys have an explanation. So, before I begin this, I want to give a little bit of information about me. I'm 26, a female, kind of a tomboy. I grew up climbing trees and playing in the dirt. I have never touched a Barbie in my life. Back in the summer of 2002, I was 16 at the time, my then boyfriend asked me on a camping trip with him and his parents. Me being the tomboy that I was, I graciously accepted. His parents had planned out a weekend of us going rafting, boating, swimming, the works. Honestly, I was in paradise. They had an RV and it was furnished with everything. I slept in the living kitchen area on a makeshift bed, even though my boyfriend's parents didn't give a fuck where I slept. I just did it out of courtesy. We were out in the middle of the woods in a designated camping area. It was so quiet and peaceful that I almost forgot myself. You could even hear the river in the stillness of the night. It was really soothing, and I remember thinking to myself that I could live here forever. The next day was probably the funnest day of my life. We all went kayaking, which I have to say was awesome. And then we swam and my boyfriend's dad cooked us out. I can't remember the last time that I laughed so much and genuinely enjoyed myself. It seemed like the day flew by, and before I knew it, it was time for us to go to bed. We had a big day planned for the next day, and I was eager to get some sleep just so that I could wake up and do it all over again. I remember laying awake though, and just staring at the ceiling. My boyfriend was snoring, and I laughed as quietly as I could. He honestly snored so loud. I got one last laugh before, literally, my life was changed forever. There was a tap on the side of the RV. It caught me off guard, and I wasn't too alarmed at this point. I just thought it was a random noise. You know the ones. A creak here and there. A sound of something settling. Whatever. The bottom line is, I wasn't scared or freaked out. I tried to sleep, but then I heard another tap. And then I heard an unmistakable giggle. And I thought that maybe my boyfriend's parents were awake and getting some adult time or something. I was thinking to myself, please, God, let me fall asleep soon at this point. But then silence just washed over the place. I hear the river, the ringing in my ears you get when it's dead silent, and I had this sinking feeling in my stomach. I hear people say that they get it when something bad is about to happen, and I can tell you that I felt it in that moment. In the dead silence, I hear the giggle again, followed by a scraping sound coming from outside the RV. My heart jumped into my throat, and I felt tears in my eyes. When I get nervous or scared, I cry, unfortunately. Someone, though, was definitely outside the RV, but I was literally scared stiff. I couldn't move a muscle, and the scraping sound continued. I whispered for my boyfriend, but he just kept snoring. I was laying about 5 feet away from the main door, although there are the 2 doors at the front of the RV too, and one emergency one at the back. I kept watching the little square hole in the door, hoping that no one would come through. There was more silence, and my heart was beating so fast. Honestly, I was afraid that I was going to have a heart attack or something. I tapped my chest to try and just calm myself down. As I'm watching the square hole in the door, I see a small, delicate-looking hand almost appear from the darkness. I almost shriek out loud. The hand was a girl's, no doubt. I could see those fake press-ons, and I know them from any Walmart store. But that still didn't stop me from almost shitting my pants. I sit up and I start screaming. And I mean, I start wailing. My boyfriend's parents stagger into the room, and all I can do is point to the door. My boyfriend's dad goes to open the door, but there's a sudden crash, and then he falls back inside, falling onto the couch. He was out cold now. There were rocks falling onto the floor. And that's when my boyfriend wakes up, starts shouting. And his mum is going insane, attending to her husband. I'm screaming still, in shock. Boyfriend is flipping his shit, and I eventually stop screaming. When I do stop screaming, I hear this hysterical laughter from outside, followed by heavy footsteps on the top of the RV. I hear someone say that we're on the roof, in a high-pitched, nasally voice, teasing kind of, from outside the RV. None of us had cell phones, and the RV was rocking with someone jumping up and down on it. And then there's a crash as someone rams against the door frame. The girl outside is laughing and screaming and mocking me. The dad manages to sober up, grabs a gun from one of the cupboards and opens the door and fires out into the darkness. The prancing on the roof stops immediately. The girl shrieking outside stops suddenly, and everything goes silent. I turn to look at my boyfriend. There's a window behind him, and I see the face, a hood drawn over his face. I knew it was a man immediately because I could make out the outline of a beard on his face, but that was it. The man raised a gloved hand and waved at me. I pulled my boyfriend away from the window and started screaming. The dad runs inside, asking what's wrong, and I look back at the window, and the man, he's gone. We drove out of the campsite that night with a broken window. My boyfriend's dad went to the hospital with a minor concussion where the rocket hit him. The parents called the police the next morning, and officers went out and searched the area. They didn't find anything. There were no other reports ever filed after us either. I had to go to counseling and therapy because I had trouble sleeping for about 2 years after this. My boyfriend and I broke up due to the stress I was going through from it, actually. Eventually, though, I started getting better. But then, while I was in university, some girlfriend and I decided to go to the movies. There was a new one out, called The Strangers. I decided to go because I didn't have any homework. It turns out that it was scarily like the experience that I went through, and I ended up having a panic attack in the middle of the theater and had to go to the hospital. A few months after that, I read a newspaper article where a woman was arrested at a campsite, not too far from where my boyfriend and his parents were that summer, for vandalizing some tents and RVs. I don't know if it was the same girl because it didn't show her picture, but it sure made me wonder. As of 2012, I no longer go to therapy or have nightmares, but I do own several different types of guns, and if you knock on my door in the middle of the night, you better have a damn good explanation as to why you're there. Also, stay the fuck off my roof.